Hey friends, thanks for joining me again today. If we've never met before, my name is Sharon and I'm happy that you're here today. So what I've written down on the slide is a sentence that you may have thought in your head or you may have said out loud before. My listening is bad. So if you've ever felt that way, I'm glad that you're here. Stick with me for some ideas about how to improve your listening. So I want you to imagine a situation. Imagine this. Imagine that you love soccer. And I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. I want to play soccer. And so I asked you for advice and I said, student, how can I get better at soccer? What would you tell me? Would you tell me that there is a special computer software that can teach me how to play soccer? Would you tell me here's a medicine that you can take that'll help you play soccer? Would you say, well, why don't you play basketball? That'll help you play soccer. You wouldn't say any of those things to me, right? Because the best way to learn to play soccer is by playing soccer. And I say that because it's a good example of my advice to you. If you say my listening is bad, I'm going to say back to you, well, what are you doing to practice your listening? And if your answer is, well, a whole lot of nothing, then your listening is going to continue to be bad. Listening is a skill. It's also, you can consider it a muscle. And if you don't exercise those muscles, they remain weak and they never get any better. So how can we improve your listening? That's what I'm going to be talking about today. First, I want you to understand who specifically I'm talking to. Most of my lessons are made for intermediate English learners. So if these descriptions that I put up here next sound like you are in the right place. So I take these listening descriptors from the Common European Framework of Reference, which is kind of like a handbook to tell language teachers what students can be able to do at different proficiency levels when they're learning a language. So the B1 level and the B2 levels are considered intermediate language learners. And the biggest difference between B1 and B2 is that B1 focuses on familiar ideas, and the way that they understand best is when someone delivers information slowly and clearly. Okay. B2 is more complex. A person is able to understand more than just familiar things. Okay, so they are able to adjust their listening more than a B1 learner is. But if either of these sound like, yeah, that's about where I am in my English, you are in the right place. I'm also going to share with you the speaking descriptors. So not speaking is interwoven with listening, and so that's the reason I want to bring these up. So when you speak English, can you be unprepared to do so? If somebody just started speaking to you in English, could you continue that conversation, or would you feel like, oh my God, I can't? So if you're a B1 learner, you can be unprepared for conversations that are related specifically to familiar topics, things that you know about. B2 is different because you can have fluency and spontaneity in your interaction, and you also take an active part. You're not just listening, but you're also engaging with the person that's talking to you. So if you want to learn how to play soccer, you have to play soccer, and not just soccer on Saturday. You have to play soccer every day of the week. So this is something that I tell my students in person. You cannot just study for 4 or 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday and expect to get better. What's a better approach is to develop a routine of doing something short and something regular. So maybe it's listening for 10 minutes a day. So you have to build routines to develop your listening. So consider your learning context. Where are you living and how are people using English? If you are living in a country where people are not using English to communicate with each other, then your need to use English is different than if you're living in a country where people are using English all around you. You might also be living in a context where English is an international language, where a lot of people speak different languages, but everyone knows English to do business and trade and other kinds of communication. So if you are, it's always helpful to be in an immersive context. So if you are living in a place where you're surrounded by English, take advantage of that context. Even if you're not directly engaging with the people who are using English, go sit in a cafe, listen to people using English. All of that input coming at you and that you're processing is going to help. But if you are in a context where English is a foreign language or it's an international language, you have to figure out where you can get YouTube videos like this, or what learning apps you can get on your phone can help you. You can be part of social media groups where people are using English. So you have to figure out how to build those regular routines into your daily life. So when students ask me how much listening and how often, I always say a little bit every single day is better than a whole lot once a week or once a month. It's the same concept of getting better at soccer. You have to do something every single day. So I want to talk just a little bit about the nature of listening so you can understand and think about where your specific challenges might be. So if you're into technology, you can think of language as input-output, right? It's the same idea as a computer. You know, we put things in and then we have output coming out of it. With language, we have a lot of different input, and depending on the context that we learn in, that input can be natural. Maybe it's just around us when we're at the grocery store. But if we're living somewhere where people don't use English every single day, we might get English through podcasts or social media or songs, okay? So if you're trying to increase your listening proficiency in a context where people aren't naturally using it around you, again, you have to seek out that listening input. The more input that you have coming at you, the more your brain is cognitively processing that input. If all your brain has coming at it is your native language or other languages other than English, you are not being challenged to make sense of what you're hearing. So you have to have a lot of input coming at you regularly to give your brain the opportunity to develop those muscles in making sense of the language. And once you, the more input that you have, the more output you can have. You cannot be a good English speaker if you don't have a lot of input coming at you. So, I mean, think about that. Input it shows us vocabulary, how grammar is used. The more input that we have coming at us, the more we can think about what language sounds like. How does English sound? What words do people use? And if we don't have a lot of experience in that, we really don't know how to speak. So if you're trying to become a better speaker of English, become a better listener. It will help. So types of listening, we have two major types, top-down and bottom up. Top-down listening means we're processing for overall meaning. We're listening for ideas. We also have bottom-up listening where we're listening for specific sounds and specific words. Sometimes what happens is when we are beginning learners, we end up focusing too much over here on the bottom up. We get discouraged when we can't hear words, when we can't hear specific sounds. When we're beginning listeners, we hear this stream of speech, right? And we're not sure where to divide it. We're like, was that a word? When did that person say a word? So for example, if I were to say, it looks set. It looks set. You might be like, I didn't finish that sentence, by the way, but if I say, it looks set, you might be having trouble understanding where to break apart those words. And this is what I was saying. Oh, sorry. It looks set. You wouldn't know that if you don't have enough experience with language input coming at you. Okay? So there are these two types of listening work together to help us make sense of what we hear. You can't have just top down and you can't have just bottom up. It's important to develop both of those skills. A lot of times students tell me, oh, I can't write fast enough. That's my problem. If only I could write faster. And I tell them it's not being able to write fast enough. It's being able to increase your memory recall. So everyone's working memory can hold between 6 and 8 items, okay? Weak listeners will process those items as words. However, strong listeners can process those items as chunks. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This is a strategy you can use to help you recall information better. So I'm going to say a sentence to you, and I want you to try to write on your piece of paper what I'm saying. Use whatever method works best for you. All right, so no cheating, no replaying. Here we go. It's not easy to find a comfortable mattress, especially when you don't have money and your house is limited in space. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video and let's compare. Here's what I said. All right, so if you are a weak listener, you are trying to process each of those words. But what a good listener will do is chunk together parts of this sentence into meaningful units. So here's how you can do that. So I broke this down into 3 parts. It's not easy to find a comfortable mattress. In my brain, I think mattress. The second thing, especially when you don't have much money, I translate that into no money. And your house is limited in space, becomes no space. So now my brain can hold on to mattress, no money, no space much more easily than it could all of those words in that sentence, right? So I'm going to try it again now. I'm going to give you a new sentence, and I want you to try to use the chunking method. All right, here we go. No cheating. It's not fun to spend your vacation cleaning the house, but sometimes it's necessary when you have 2 small kids. All right, so let's check that one. So you can chunk it down into 3 groups. It's not fun to spend your vacation cleaning the house becomes cleaning the house vacation. And then, but sometimes it's necessary becomes necessary. And then when you have 2 small kids becomes small kids. So you may not get exactly the words right when you're taking notes, but when you're taking notes, you don't need to know exactly the words that a person said, right? You need to know the ideas. So that's my strategy for improving your specific note-taking skills. I want to also mention some specific websites and apps that you can use for listening practice, because I know there are people that are watching this video that do not have access to English around them when they go outside. So it's good to know where you can go for help. There are 3 specific websites I'll bring up now. My first one is my favorite. It's Breaking News English. Then we have Listenwise.com and TED Talks with an interactive transcript. So I'm going to show you those one by one here. All right. All right, sorry, it's just taking just a minute. So we'll start with Breaking News English. I'm going to put myself in the corner. Oh, look, there I go. I'm moving around. Put you over here, the ad. Okay, so Breaking News English, what you can see here is that you have different levels. You can choose your level to listen to. So let's say we're going to choose level 3, right in the middle. And then you're going to pick a news story to listen to. Oh, that's gross. Sells her old bathwater in bottles. That's disgusting. Let's do smoking can damage the eyes. So what I want to point out here is right here, they have exactly what the person is going to say. So if you want to practice your listening, don't read it. You're going to go, you can choose North American or British English. And then here you can choose how quickly the person is speaking. So I'm going to choose medium North American.
Smoking can damage the eyes. This is breakingnewsenglish.com. Scientists are warning that people who smoke are in danger of damaging their eyes.
Okay. After you listen, you can go back, and if it helps you, if you're still pretty weak in your listening skills, you can listen to that while you're reading to help build your sound word correspondence. After you listen, you can go down here and do a quiz. Is that the quiz? Specific listening skills. They have a quiz here. And then the answers to that quiz are all the way at the bottom of the page. I use this with students because it gives them a way of checking how well they understood something. Let's look at Listenwise next. So I do not have an account with Listenwise, but I just wanted to mention the website because it seems so cool. What it is again, news stories, and they have interactive transcripts. You can listen to them. You can read and listen at the same time if you want. And they also have some other cool features for English learners. So I wanted to mention this as an option for you. You have, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's look at TED Talks. A lot of people already know about TED Talks, but I wanted to make sure you knew about interactive transcripts. When you click on the transcript, you can click on the specific phrase and it'll take you directly to that part in the video like this.
And you're never asked back, curiously. That's I think that strikes me. But if you are, and you say to somebody, they say, what do you do? And you say, you work in a...
Okay, so that is very helpful for helping build the sound and word correspondence as well. Okay. My next app that I want to show you, I'll just skip right to it, is Lyrics Training. So in Lyrics Training, you make an account and then you can choose different songs or movies to help you practice your listening skills. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to do movies. I don't know, what are we thinking? Avengers. How about this one? So when you play it, you can choose what level. Let me move myself out of the way here. You can play it at the beginner level. And then you press start, and this is what happens.
You know the jungle.
All right, so we missed it. Sorry about that. Okay, so we put in you.
You know the jungle. It's a part of you. But exploring is not a game. And you don't look before you leap.
I'm okay, Boots.
We're onto something big, Dora.
An ancient city made of gold.
Did you hear it? If you didn't hear it, you can go back.
We're onto something big, Dora.
An ancient city made of gold.
Onto.
We're onto something big, Dora.
An ancient city made of gold.
Okay. So that's how it works. It takes out words, and then you, as you listen, you type in what you hear. So I think it's a pretty cool way of practicing some bottom-up listening. All right, so I'm going to bring myself back up, I think. All right. And my final advice today is to simply be kind to yourself. Do not hate yourself because your listening needs improvement. I've seen too many students get so upset at themselves because they cannot understand well. And I mean, honestly, it's time, it's exposure, it's practice, it's experience. Learning English takes a long time, and if you're not doing well with your listening, just keep at it. Just keep practicing. It gets better with practice. And I'm going to end here with my references in case you want to take a look at those CEFR levels, or if you want to take a look at that book that talks about bottom-up and top-down listening. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Keep studying.